that like biologically a man is a man and a woman is a woman. I was just wondering what you see the detriment of society, like why we can't like let a transgender like woman be called she or something.
Because it is a lie.
I agree.
Detrimental to society. So I think there are a couple of reasons. So yeah, sorry, you let him finish the question. That's fine.
No, I'm just wondering, what do you see? I understand it's lying. Like I was taught not to lie. I just don't understand what is so wrong about that specific lie.
Well, I mean, as opposed to other lies, I'm not sure there is anything wrong. I mean, I don't like all of them. But as far as that specific lie, I think that one of the problems that we have is this determination that men can become women and women can become men undermines some barriers between men and women that I think are useful and good, particularly in children. So if I have to teach my 3.5-year-old, right, she's almost 4, if I teach my almost 4-year-old girl that she can become a boy, then I think that is not only lying to her, I think it's confusing her, and I think it's damaging to her psyche. One of the premises of the transgender movement is that human minds are completely non-malleable. That oddly enough, men are not men and women are not women, but if you are transgender, that is unchangeable, and that especially among children, if a 3 or 4-year-old has certain feelings, those feelings have to be taken completely seriously. We can't fight against them. We can't suggest that the kid will grow out of it. Instead, we have to say that this kid is inherently transgender. I can tell you, having kids are incredibly malleable. Kids are easily confused. And saying to a child, which is what the transgender movement would like to do, I mean, they're having drag shows in kindergarten now in some areas. When you do that, when you confuse kids about gender, you're doing the kids no favors. You're doing them or you could be doing significant damage to kids. Kids should not be confused about their biology. Kids should not be confused about their gender. And let's put it this way, just from a certain statistical standpoint, if it is true that the transgender suicide attempt rate is 40% over the lifetime, and if I am right, then more kids will be confused about gender, which, by the way, you do see. You've seen an uptick in transgender surgery in Europe. You've seen a greater identification as transgender overall. In places like Europe, malleable rates of transgenderism in Europe. If that's the case, then you're raising the suicide rates, presumably, if there's an association between for young people who are now confused about gender. So I'm not in the mood for countenancing lies about what men and women are, specifically when I think that there is a goal of redefining a key term for the entire society.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So this question, I know no one's asked you yet, because it's a relatively new phenomenon. But to preface before we get on to the question, you've mentioned before, to which I agree to, that the women back in the days, more with like Christian values and Judeo-Christian values, that they realized men act a certain way. Therefore, we should take preemptive measures so that men don't act that way because we know how they act. Whereas the new third-wave feminist movement sees men and says, well, if men act that way, therefore women can act that way as well. So what this is leading to is the new phenomenon is the slut walk movement. I don't know if you've known about that.
Yeah.
With Amber Rose. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, what do you think are the ramifications of women saying, well, if men can go out and dress however they want and women can do the exact same thing, do you think that leads to a loosening of the fabric of society?
Of course
where
I do.
shame is a necessary determinant in society?
Yeah,
and that it leads to like sexual assault and an increase in things?
Okay, so I think that, first of all, if somebody commits a sexual assault, the only person to blame is the person who commits the sexual assault, right? That right off the bat. Mm-hmm. Right? Victims are not to blame for their own sexual assault. I also think that if you put yourself in a risky situation, then you've put yourself in a risky situation, right? We do this every day, right? Every day we make decisions about what sort of situations to put ourselves in. If I walk through a high-crime neighborhood waving $100 bills above my head and then I am robbed, then it is the fault of the person who robs me. It is not my fault. But I also made a bad decision to do that.
Yes.
Okay, so two things can be true at once. And it is not blaming the victim to say that it's a bad decision to walk through a high-crime neighborhood at night waving your wallet over your head.
Yeah.
Right? It is also not a good idea to go to parties where drinking and drugs are commonplace with a bunch of guys who are pigs.
Yes.
Right? That's just not a good idea. Now, does that relieve responsibility from the guys? 100% not. If a guy rapes you or sexually assaults you, he should be castrated or killed.
Yeah.
I'm very strict on this.
Absolutely.
But
and one more question.
One of the things that I hate so much about this conversation is that people assume two things can't be true at once. That if I think that rape is bad, and I also think that you shouldn't make decisions that heighten your own risk factor, that I'm somehow blaming the person who heightened the risk factor for the bad thing that happened to them. No, two things can always be true at once, and normally they are.
Yeah, I just think the slut walk's increasing the sexual liberation.
You know, as far as slut walk, again, I don't know why anybody would be prideful about their own promiscuity, man or woman.
Yeah.
It's confusing to me. As somebody who is a virgin until marriage and very proud proudly so, and believe that that has made my relationship with my wife better and stronger and holier. I am perfectly consistent on this. I hold women to a particular standard. I hold men to a particular standard. That standard is being classy.
Yeah.
I know that word has kind of lost some of its meaning these days, but being classy.
And one thing, Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, he says that the Politicon debate that you were with, he says that it wasn't a real debate because debating you was like debating with a robot. So, and he preferred Tucker Carlson's debate. How do you respond to Cenk?
I mean, he preferred Tucker Carlson's debate because he and Tucker agree on more things. I mean, really, that's not a rip on Tucker. He and Tucker agree on all this stuff about corporations need to be restricted, and Tucker's more of an economic populist, and cut out campaign spending and all this kind of stuff. I mean, if he doesn't like debating me, that's his prerogative. He agreed to it. I mean, and as far as debating a robot, like, I'm sorry, I'm good at my job. No, I did. You just don't like the answer. I'm sorry if you don't like the answer. As far as the institutional racism, all I would ask you to consider, you can believe what you want, but I would ask you to consider this. Shouting institutional racism does not actually combat racism. You have to find individual instances, and you have to show me who the racists are so that we can fight them together. I hate racism. I think it's evil. But if you're just going to say institutional racism every time something bad happens, there's no way to fight it. I need a policy that you're proposing, or I need a person who's actually racist so that we can fight it together, or we can determine whether the policy is good. What I find really problematic is the virtue signaling that I see by so many people on the other side, which is, I don't have to give you the racist, I don't have to tell you who he is or what measures I'm proposing. I just say institutional racism, everybody cheers for me because that's an approved point of view, and now we move on with our lives. You haven't helped anybody, you've just made yourself feel better. If you want to, have her respond, please.
Well, I think that institutional racism in and of itself, first of all, I would say that the majority of the people that do bring up institutional racism do also have solutions as to how to combat it. But
which invariably involve encroaching on other people's liberty. But yes.
Well, I would just say that there is kind of, again, I feel like you're painting a wide and diverse group of people with the same brush and saying that if you can't point to a policy or if you can't point to a person, then you're just wasting everyone's time. And I think that a lot of people are trying to point to policies, and while I think that the idea of pointing to a racist person is fundamentally in contrast with the idea of institutional racism, because institutional racism grapples with implicit bias in the society as a whole, or not like a ghost in the machine, but in individuals.
Unless you're connecting that to a policy, it's a cop-out. Because now we're ghost hunting again. If you just said to me, we have a problem in American society, income inequality, right, is a problem in American society. If you just gave me any problem, and I said, well, that's the Bilderbergs' fault, right? That's the fault of the Bilderbergs, right? It's a conspiracy. It's the fault of the Bilderbergs, right? There are all these conspiracy theories about the Bilderberg group. Now, let's say that it's the Bilderbergs' fault, or it's the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It's whatever it is. There's some conspiracy out there. You would say to me, that's not useful because what are you even talking about? When you say institutional racism, it's too broad. You at least have to name me the institution. Which one is the racist one? Which institution is racist? Tell me which, so we can fight it, seriously, so we can fight it together. Just shouting slogans like institutional racism it's not effective. Shouting white privilege is not effective. I want to be on your side. I do. I want to fight racists. I think racist behavior is evil. I want to fight it with you, but I can't fight it if you're not showing me what it is. And we have to decide together if the policies you're proposing will alleviate racism or exacerbate racism. And it turns out, I think that a lot of the policies proposed by the left, I think institutional racism is is usually a lever for proposing a policy that is actually unpalatable to freedom, and then castigating people on the other side of that policy as being in league with the institutional racism. The policies are either good or bad without regard to words like institutional racism, is what I'm saying. Honestly, I'd love to sit down and talk with you for an hour about it because it's a worthwhile conversation, and I think we could actually get somewhere with it. But I think that slogans generally tend not to be particularly effective in getting us to solutions.
Hey there, Ben. So I understand that you're an adequate opposer of socialism. My question to you is about socialist ideas that have worked in the past, such as Social Security or Medicare. I understand Social Security is a mess right now, but it has helped millions of Americans in the past. So do you think that we should banish socialist ideas in general in the United States, or limit it to
banish.
something like
And the reason I say that is because so what socialism basically does is it takes the resources of a given society and it freezes them there and then it redistributes them. It doesn't account for growth. It doesn't allow for innovation and enlarging the pie. Socialism basically says, however much money is in the economy, it's unfair how it's distributed. Take it, redistribute it. That's the end of it. The problem is once you do that, you get rid of the incentive to innovate and to build new things and create new services. So, of course, it's true that if there are 5 of us in a room and I have $5 and nobody else has any money and I just give each person $1, then everybody in the room is better off except for me. That's true, but I now have no incentive to go out and make $5 more because you're all just going to take the money. This is true of Social Security also. So Social Security has actually created an enormous downside for society now. So in the short term, it's great, right? You take a bunch of money that doesn't belong to you, you give it to a bunch of old people, they're happy. It didn't cost you that much money because it's the baby boom and there are a lot of people who are young and there are not that many people who are old. Then the baby boomers get old and now we're all screwed, right? People who are our age are never going to see our Social Security money. It's gone. We're never seeing it again. Kiss it goodbye, right? So, so one problem is that older people did not have an incentive to save. So the savings rate actually went down after Social Security because you may as well spend your money. Somebody else is going to pay for you when you're old. The second thing that happened is people stopped having kids as much. It actually had a market impact. Jonathan B. Lass at Weekly Standard has a very good book about this. It actually had a market impact on birth rates. Because one of the reasons to have a kid, not to be cynical about this, but it's true, is that historically, when you get old, who takes care of you? Your kids, right? I mean, that was the net cost. The net cost was that you were going to spend an enormous amount of money educating your children, bringing them up, keeping them safe, and then, when you got old, you weren't going to have to worry about it because little Billy was going to take care of you. Now Social Security takes care of you, so do you even have to have kids? And that's what's created this enormous bulge in the old population in the United States and very little on the young side of the population in the United States. And because as a society we tend to abdicate to government what government is willing to take over, it's also created this immoral notion that the government's going to take care of all the old people so we don't have to worry about it as a society. Social fabric doesn't matter anymore. So this is why I'm not in favor of socialism, you know, and Social Security is a good example. I'm not in favor of it because it has, just like every other socialist program, it has a set of discrete beneficiaries, but diffuse victims. And the diffuse victims are much more common than the discrete beneficiaries, and they grow over time.
Okay.